I still remember the sound of the room before it happened. That kind of heavy silence that means people are pretending to breathe normally. If you've ever sat in a boardroom right before a presentation that could make or break your career, you know what I mean. It's not the kind of silence that comes from calm. It's the kind that tastes like metal. That morning I told myself it was just nerves. My deck was perfect. Numbers polished. Slides clean. Strategy airtight. I'd spent 3 months building this project, the kind that could define a person's next 5 years. The promotion was practically in the air. I'd even worn the Navy suit, the one I saved for milestones, not Mondays. My intern, Mia, stood a few seats to my left, clutching her notepad like a lifeline. She'd only been with me 2 months, but she was sharp. The kind of quiet intelligence that notices things most people overlook. I remember thinking she looked paler than usual. When I asked if she was okay, she gave a small nod that didn't reach her eyes. The CEO walked in, followed by the VP of Finance and the 2 department heads, who never smiled unless someone failed. Chairs shifted, laptops opened. The projector hummed to life. I started my pitch. Clear voice, steady rhythm. Years of practice in front of skeptical investors paid off. But something was wrong. The faces around the table weren't neutral. They were rehearsed. They didn't look like people hearing an idea for the first time. They looked like people waiting for me to trip. A couple of glances passed between them. I saw smirks that weren't jokes. I felt it in my gut. That chill that tells you someone already knows something you don't. Still, I kept going. Slide 12, market growth forecast. Then slide 13, projected revenue by quarter. That's when it happened. Mia leaned toward me, so quietly that only I could hear. Her voice was barely a breath. "Look under the table." At first, I thought I'd misheard. Her eyes were fixed straight ahead, wide and alert. Again, just a whisper. "Please, now." I glanced down. There, taped to the underside of the conference table, right near my feet, was a small black device. A flash drive, half hidden under a strip of transparent tape, like it had been placed in a hurry. My heart froze. I didn't move, didn't speak. I just blinked, swallowed, and continued talking about Q4 efficiency metrics while my mind raced. Why would there be a flash drive taped under my seat? Who would even... Then I saw Mark. He was across the table, pretending to take notes, the corner of his mouth tight. Mark, my colleague, my supposed teammate, the one who'd been oddly curious about my project lately, the one who'd accidentally asked to borrow my laptop last week, the one who, for the past few days, had been a little too friendly with our department head. Something clicked. I forced myself to finish the slide, to answer a question from the VP like nothing was wrong. My voice didn't shake, but my hand under the table brushed the cool edge of that taped plastic, and I felt the faint tremor in my fingertips. The meeting kept going. Mark's turn came up. He cleared his throat and stood, connecting his laptop to the projector with practiced ease. His title slide popped up. An internal audit of strategic forecasting methods. My blood ran cold. My file name, my project's internal code was on his slide. I looked at Mia. She didn't move, but her knuckles were white around her pen. She knew. Somehow she'd seen this coming. As Mark spoke, he began to outline inconsistencies in my data. Slides that were eerily similar to mine, but altered just enough to make me look careless, incompetent, maybe even dishonest. He was building a story where I was the problem, and he was the hero who caught it. Every word he said tightened the noose. I kept my expression neutral, nodded at the right moments. My manager's brow furrowed. The VP of Finance scribbled something down. I felt my career slipping through invisible fingers. Then Mark said, with just the right amount of fake concern, "We believe these discrepancies originated from James's data handling, possibly an oversight, but given the upcoming audit..." I raised a hand, calm, even. "Before we speculate, could we take a short break?" The CEO looked at me, surprised. 2 minutes, he said. As soon as the door shut, I crouched, pulled the tape loose, and slid the flash drive into my pocket. Mia whispered, barely audible, "I saw him put it there. Before the meeting." I didn't look at her, just nodded once. My pulse was in my throat. When everyone returned, I let Mark finish. Let him talk himself into confidence. Then I plugged my own laptop back in. "Before we move on," I said, "I'd like to cross-check something." The room quieted. I opened the folder where my project files were stored, except the latest version was gone, replaced with the doctored data. Someone had swapped them out. The flash drive in my pocket suddenly felt heavier than gold. "I'll need to verify the source," I said. "I think there's been an internal sync issue." The CEO nodded. "Do that. We'll reconvene tomorrow." Mark smiled like a man who'd already won. As people filed out, Mia stayed behind. Her voice trembled when she said, "I didn't know what else to do." I shook my head slowly. "You did exactly what you needed to." I left the room with the flash drive burning a hole in my pocket, pretending I hadn't just witnessed my own execution being delayed by a whisper. If she hadn't spoken those 3 words, I'd probably be unemployed right now, but that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. You know that half-awake, half-frozen state where your mind replays every detail on a loop, the light on someone's face, the tone of their voice, the way a sentence sounded just wrong enough to mean more than it said? That was me until sunrise. By the time I got to the office, the coffee was cold before I even tasted it. Mia was already there, sitting at her desk with her hair tied back, eyes fixed on her screen. She didn't look up when I walked in. She didn't have to. "You still have it?" she asked quietly. I pulled the flash drive from my pocket, placed it on the desk between us. "Yeah." Her voice dropped even lower. "I saw him do it. Mark, he came in early yesterday. Said you'd asked him to print the updated deck. I didn't think much of it until I noticed the timestamp on your files. Then this morning, before the meeting, he dropped that thing under the table, like it was nothing." I looked at her. "And you didn't say anything sooner?" She flinched. "I didn't know if you'd believe me." I wanted to be angry, but I couldn't. Because she was right. I probably wouldn't have. You don't expect betrayal to look like a man who's shared your lunch table for 5 years. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It opened instantly. Inside, 3 folders, each named after my project's key phases. The files were perfect copies, except for one change in each. Revenue inflated here, cost projections exaggerated there, and a set of falsified data that would have turned my year of work into a scandal. Mark hadn't just set me up. He'd prepared an execution that looked like accountability. I stared at the numbers until the screen blurred. Mia spoke first. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet." She nodded, hesitated, then added, "He's been talking to HR a lot lately. I think he's trying to get the director position before you." That tracked. The promotion I'd been working toward, the one that came with a corner office and a salary bump, was down to 2 names, his and mine. So he decided to make the choice easier. I leaned back, exhaled slowly. If I confront him now, he'll just deny it. HR will spin it as a misunderstanding. He's too careful for proof to stick. Mia looked at me like she already knew what I was thinking. "You're not going to HR." "Not yet?" She nodded, lips pressed tight. "Then what?" I closed the laptop. We play it quiet. We let him think it worked. That week, I acted normal. I complimented Mark's audit. I thanked him for his attention to detail. Every time he smiled, it looked like victory. He started walking with that small swagger of someone who thinks the future's already printed in their nameplate. I let him. Behind the scenes, I spent nights combing through system logs, backups, and email threads. There it was, an external upload from my account, timestamped during the night I'd been homesick. I didn't have VPN access that night, but someone did, and that someone had used my credentials. I checked the access terminal ID. It matched Mark's workstation. Got you. I copied everything, the logs, the timestamps, even the internal IP trace, and saved it to a separate drive. Then I called IT. "Routine security review," I said casually. "Can you send me last week's activity report for the shared network folders?" They sent it. Same result. Same terminal. Same name buried deep in the metadata. It was all there, but I couldn't use it yet. If I blew it too soon, it did look personal. I needed it to look procedural. So I waited. 2 days later, during the Friday sync meeting, Mark brought up data integrity again, pretending it was about teamwork, but really about optics. He used phrases like preventing future errors and learning moments. I watched our boss nod along like she was taking mental notes. I smiled. "Good point," I said evenly. "Maybe we should establish stricter version control." "Exactly," he agreed, looking pleased with himself. "Let's discuss that Monday morning," I added. Full department meeting. He didn't realize I'd just scheduled his downfall. That weekend I built a new file, a proposal draft for a fake partnership. It looked real. Real enough to tempt someone who couldn't resist touching what wasn't his. I stored it in a folder marked Confidential and Renewal V2 and left my computer on when I left the office Sunday night. Then I waited. Monday morning the file was gone. Someone had copied it. At 9 a.m. we gathered in the conference room. I ran the meeting as usual. Then halfway through I paused, mid-sentence, and looked at the team. "Quick question," I said, smiling. "Has anyone accessed the renewal file over the weekend?" Silence. Heads shook. "Strange," I said, "because IT flagged a data transfer from our network Sunday at 10:37 p.m. Mark's expression flickered, just for a second, then settled back into neutral. "Maybe a system glitch," he offered smoothly. "Could be," I said, "although the log shows your terminal ID." That did it. The air thinned. I watched his throat move, a faint swallow. "There must be a mistake." "Maybe," I said. "That's why I've invited compliance to join us this morning." The door opened. 2 HR officers walked in, followed by someone from internal audit. Mark's chair creaked. "This isn't about mistakes," I said quietly. "It's about patterns." He started to speak, but I cut him off with a look I didn't know I was capable of. Calm. Icy. Done. Mia sat in the corner, silent. Her eyes met mine for a second. Just long enough to say now. By noon, IT confirmed the transfers. The same user ID, same timestamps, same laptop. Every file he'd manipulated was traced. When security escorted him out, he didn't look back at me. Just straight ahead, jaw tight, pretending he still had control. But that was just the first domino. Because what happened next didn't just clear my name. It changed everything I thought I knew about loyalty. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. I thought it was over. I thought firing Mark would close the chapter, the way movies end when the villain gets caught. But offices aren't movies. They're quieter, slower, and a lot meaner than you expect. The day after security walked him out, the halls felt off. People whispered. Some avoided my eye. Others smiled too easily, like they were testing which way the wind was blowing. I'd won technically, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the wreckage of something you'd spent years building, realizing the smoke is yours to clean up, Mia noticed first. "They think you set him up," she said, voice low. "HR's been asking around. They're trying to see if you manipulated the situation." Of course they were. Mark hadn't gone quietly. He'd filed a formal complaint before leaving the building, claiming retaliation and entrapment. Corporate poison, the kind that seeps into every room. I spent 3 days doing what I always do, working, pretending not to care. But something was eating at me, not fear, not guilt, something else. It hit me one night while staring at the empty office, lights humming softly, city noise bleeding through the windows. Mark's downfall wasn't the problem, it was the culture that made him possible. The kind that rewards smiles over substance, the kind I'd been serving for years. That night, I stopped being the hero. I started digging, not into Mark this time, into the people above him. I still had access to internal correspondence from the project, and what I found wasn't just sabotage. It was a network of quiet approvals. Expense reports tweaked, forecasts rewritten, signatures delegated. Mark hadn't acted alone. He'd been covering for someone higher. The realization hit like a slow-moving train. The VP of Finance, the one who'd looked so interested during my presentation, was in on it. My project had been more than a target. It had been a front, a perfect scapegoat for falsified performance numbers that made his department look golden. Mark was just the fall guy. I was supposed to be the second. Mia helped me trace the pattern. Late nights, confidential reports, audit trail after audit trail, all leading to one locked folder on the corporate server, the kind labeled restricted executive use only. "Do we go to HR?" she asked. I shook my head. "They work for him." "Then what?" I looked at the screen. "We do what he did. We use their own system." The next morning I met with IT again. This time I didn't ask for permission. "We're running a compliance test," I said, showing them my director's credentials. They didn't question it. I copied the contents of that restricted folder onto a fresh drive. Expense sheets, client reports, internal memos. It was all there. Millions redirected through consulting fees that didn't exist. It was elegant, clean, criminal. Mia stared at the files like she'd seen a ghost. "You can't hold that," she said quietly. "It's corporate evidence." "I'm not holding it," I replied. "I'm protecting it." We built a timeline. How Mark's edits were timed to coincide with the falsified numbers. How my project data had been chosen because it was high profile, but new enough to distort without immediate detection. It was brilliant, really. Evil, but brilliant. I drafted a report. Simple, factual, with digital signatures, audit trails, and backup verification. Then I encrypted the drive and sent one copy to the company's internal legal counsel. Another went to an anonymous inbox I'd created off-network. I didn't send the third one. I kept it. That Friday, the VP called me into his office. His smile was all teeth. "Rough week, huh?" he said. I nodded. "It's been eventful." He closed the door. "Listen, James, I know things got messy with Mark. The board's not thrilled with how it played out. Optics, you understand. I think it'd be best if you took some personal time. A week or two." Translation: disappear quietly. "Of course," I said, calm. "I'll wrap up my current reports first." He relaxed, thinking I'd folded. "Good man. We'll sort this out cleanly." "Absolutely," I said. "By the way, you might want to check your inbox." He frowned. "Why?" I stood, straightened my jacket. "Because when the board reads what I just sent them, they'll want to talk to you first." He blinked, confusion flickering into dread. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see." I left before he could speak again. By Monday, it was over. Compliance froze 3 executive accounts. Legal issued a full review. The VP was suspended pending investigation, which in corporate language means finished. HR tried to keep it quiet, but nothing that explosive stays quiet for long. I got called into the CEO's office. She didn't waste time. "You've caused quite a storm," she said. "I didn't start it," I replied. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't raining." She studied me for a long time, then said, "We'll need someone to clean this up, eh? Someone we can trust." I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about Mia, about the girl who'd whispered 3 words that changed everything. "Then you already know who," I said finally. When I got back to my desk, Mia was there, staring at an empty coffee cup. "They called me in," she said nervously. "Am I in trouble?" I smiled, for the first time in weeks. "No, you're being promoted." Her eyes widened. "What?" "You earned it." She blinked, processing. "And you?" I glanced toward the glass-walled office that had belonged to the VP. The blinds were half drawn, the nameplate already gone. "I'll be sitting there by next week." She smiled faintly. "You really did it." I shook my head. "We did." That night, after the building emptied, I stayed behind. I looked out over the city, all those windows glowing like small private lives. I thought about the choices that led here, the silence, the whispers, the ambition, the betrayals. I plugged in the flash drive, the original one from under the table, opened the files, deleted them. Then I pulled it out and slid it into my desk drawer beside the newer one, the one that held the evidence that saved me. I didn't need it anymore, because the people who'd tried to bury me were already digging their own graves. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. When the storm passed, it didn't end with applause. It ended with paperwork. That's the thing about justice in real life. It doesn't come with dramatic music. It comes in the form of signatures, statements, and a silence that feels heavier than any noise. The VP was gone within a week. Resigned voluntarily, the company memo said, which everyone knew was corporate poetry for, we pushed him out quietly to avoid headlines. His assistant vanished a day later, her desk cleaned, badge deactivated. Mark never came back either. HR handled his separation discreetly, but the whispers did the work for them. He'd tried to reach me twice, once by email, once by voicemail. I deleted both without listening. There was nothing left to say. The board restructured the department. I got the title that used to hang on the VP's door, Director of Strategic Operations. A few people congratulated me. Most didn't. In places like this, people fear proximity to power almost as much as they crave it. I took the corner office, but it didn't feel like a prize. It felt quieter. The kind of quiet that comes after a long argument when you finally realize you don't have to raise your voice anymore. Mia's new desk was just outside my office. I'd fought to make her promotion official. She's sharp, I'd told the CEO, and she's loyal. The kind you can't teach. The CEO had raised an eyebrow. Loyalty's dangerous, she'd said. Sometimes it blinds people. Not hers, I replied. The weeks that followed were steady. No drama. No whispers. The air felt cleaner, but emptier too, like something vital had burned away. People smiled again, cautiously. I stopped expecting knives behind every compliment. One evening, as the office lights dimmed to their automatic glow, I heard a soft knock on my door. Mia stood there, holding 2 mugs of coffee. I figured you'd still be here, she said. She wasn't wrong. The desk lamp was the only light left on. Spreadsheets, performance charts, and a few open folders covered half the surface. I'd been staring at them for an hour without actually reading a thing. Thanks, I said, taking the mug. She sat down across from me. They told me I'm getting my own intern next month. Good, I said, smiling. Don't let them take advantage of you. She laughed softly. I'll remember that. There was a pause, the comfortable kind. Then she asked, Did you ever tell anyone what you found under that table? I shook my head. No. Why not? I looked past her, out at the city lights reflecting on the glass, because some things lose their meaning when too many people touch them. That moment, you whispering those words, it wasn't about the company. It was about trust, and trust doesn't survive exposure. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she nodded. I get that. I took a sip of coffee. It was bitter, a little cold. You saved my career, I said finally. She smiled faintly. You saved it yourself. I just noticed. Her words stayed in the air between us, soft, almost invisible, but heavier than anything else that had been said that night. After she left, I turned off the lamp. The office was dark, except for the thin line of light under the door. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and took out the flash drive, the same one she'd told me about that day. It was scratched now, the label half peeled. I turned it over in my hand. It could have ruined me. Instead, it reminded me that the smallest act of awareness can shift the whole balance of a life. I didn't keep it for proof. I kept it because every time I looked at it, I remembered how quietly things can change, how sometimes salvation doesn't scream, it whispers. I locked it back in the drawer. Months passed. The company moved on. People forgot the scandal. Promotions happened. New names filled the old roles, but I didn't chase any of it. I started leaving work earlier. I began to notice things I hadn't before. The smell of rain on the sidewalk after hours, the way sunlight fell across the conference table in the morning, the echo of laughter from the marketing floor when they thought no one was listening. Peace, I learned, doesn't announce itself. It waits. It sits quietly until you've earned enough silence to hear it. One Friday afternoon, I found Mia at the break room counter, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled. Heading out? Yeah, I said. Finally trying that thing called a weekend. She laughed. Let me know how that goes. I hesitated for a second. You know, I said, if you ever feel like the walls are closing in here, remember this. The system only wins when you start playing by its rules. She tilted her head. And what do I do instead? Listen, I said. Not to them. To what's underneath it all. That's where the truth always hides. She nodded slowly. Under the table, right? I smiled. Exactly. That night, I walked out of the building alone. No phone calls, no meetings waiting. The city air was warm, carrying the faint hum of traffic and the soft static of life continuing. I didn't feel triumphant or bitter, just still. When I reached my car, I stopped for a second watching my reflection in the window. The same suit, the same tie, the same face, but it wasn't the same man. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I wasn't fighting ghosts. I was just someone who'd learned that sometimes survival doesn't look like winning. It looks like listening. Listening when someone whispers, "Look under the table." And that's how my career was saved. Not by luck, not by revenge, but by a quiet moment no one else heard. I still keep that flash drive in my desk drawer, not as proof, as a reminder that loyalty doesn't make noise, it whispers.